just so that it's ready to go, okay?
Okay.
All right, stand by.
Welcome to the Arts and Antique Radio Show, where your host, nationally recognized certified appraiser Elizabeth Stewart, Santa Barbara's treasure sleuth, will help you put a value on the treasures in your own home.
Every time it rains, pennies from heaven. Don't you know each cloud contains pennies from heaven?
So let's find
In
out,
3,
how valuable is it?
2, 1, you are live.
Hello, Santa Barbara. It's your chantress of everything valuable and beautiful, Elizabeth Stewart. Before COVID, the week before COVID, before the lockdown, my son said, I would like to commission a piece, and I want a painter that can be fantastic with plein air and really good with figurative work. And I want a portrait of myself and the kids, etc. I thought of Derek Harrison. And since that time, I've been asking for Derek to come on to the show. And he recently said he'd like to. And I want to just say, Derek, thank you for being with me today.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you for having me. It took me too long to come on here, but I'm glad I finally did.
Here you are. And I just want to introduce by saying that Derek was part of a wonderful video that some wonderful artist did. I wasn't able to figure out who actually did the video on you and your life as a painter. So how did that video come to pass, Derek?
Yeah, it was a pretty interesting situation. So what happened was there was a younger director who wanted to make, a narrative film about two 19th century artists, a period piece essentially. And he reached out to a gallery in Laguna Beach where I was showing, because the gallery owner gives lectures on that topic, and she's kind of an expert in 19th century art and artists. So they met with her down in Laguna, and they said, we want a painter, a contemporary artist, to do some paintings for the male lead character in this film. Could you recommend anybody? And she recommended me, which was awesome. So I ended up doing these paintings for their movie. And then in the process of working with the director, he proposed the idea of doing a short documentary about myself, my career, and my life. I guess he found it somewhat interesting. He was really interested in painters at the time, oil painters, traditional artists like myself. So that's kind of how it all came to be. He sort of pitched me this idea, and I thought, why not? Let's see what happens. And we spent about 3 months filming it. It was way more in depth than I could have ever imagined, by the way. Even though it's a shorter documentary, it was a deep dive. It was enlightening, to say the least.
And who wrote the dialogue for it?
His name is Winston Stemler. And if you Google his name, you can find his IMDb page. He's directed a number of short films and has worked on movies. He was a graduate from USC's film program. a very accomplished guy, I would say. And so how he came to the dialogue actually was we did probably 4 or 5 different interviews over the course of several months. He lives in LA, and since I live up here in Santa Barbara, I would drive down there, or he would drive up here. We would just grab a coffee, and he would record all of these conversations. And then he pretty much built a whole script from those. And so the words
Oh,
were all his. But I mean, they were inspired from our conversations, but it was scripted through him.
how wonderful. I really liked the script a lot. And some of the questions for the interview today are pulled from the script of the interview. And I've got a couple really good quotes from that interview as well.
Oh, great.
And I'm gonna test you and see if you can answer some of the things you proposed as questions to the
Oh,
audience in the
oh,
video.
fantastic.
But I wanted to give a little bit of background of Derek. Derek Harrison is an artist working in the realist genre. And he just mentioned that the gallery in Laguna was looking for a painter to, work in the style of some of the 19th century realists. But the good thing about Derek's realism is that I don't know, it's different from the realism that is what you would call photorealism, because it really lives. And then what other artists say about him is that he's facile in landscape work as well as and that includes ocean work, which is hard, and atmosphere work, so tonalism. And then he's really good with the figure as well. And there's reasons for that, and I want to get into some of the reasons that I noticed. But he began painting at a young age and was included in Southwest Art Magazine 21 under 31 years old. And before his 31st birthday, he began winning awards for paintings and established a collector base. He was a finalist in the ARC Salon for many years and awarded first place 2 years in a row at Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History. And if you guys go to that show, it's incredibly good. And the paintings are for sale. I always go and walk down there from my house and just spend a good 4 hours. Derek has had work included in feature films, as we're talking about, and television shows. He's an instructor at the Los Angeles Academy of Figurative Art, the Scottsdale Artist School, as well as an adjunct faculty member at Westmont College. And throughout the video, he talks about painting as inspiration. And I want to talk a little bit about that today. And he says that painting is his life and it's a lifetime journey. And he's been working consistently in this journey in very diligent ways. Let's see, he said there are stories, compositions, and color combinations that can strike at the heart of the human spirit. Through study, practice, and skill, I want to evoke an emotional response. He does say that quite a bit in the short documentary on him as well. This emotional response, this visceral feeling, this feeling in the gut that only art can evoke in a person. We're going to talk a little bit about that as well. But Derek, I want to ask a question for you. In the video, you pose a question: what is a painter? And there's answers, various answers throughout the video. But can you answer that question? What's a painter?
That's a tough question. I'll do my best because I'll never forget one of the first art classes I ever took. I think the first day, the first question that the teacher asked of us was, can you define art? Or, what is an artist? And the entire class was pretty stumped on that one. And then the instructor was saying, it's an elusive term. You can't really define it. But I mean, I have a pretty good idea, I think, of how I would, define that. I feel like, musicians or filmmakers or artists in any genre, it's about connecting with people, connecting with an audience, expressing something that they can relate to, or maybe creating something that will transport them somewhere. It's a beautiful thing. I mean, it really is. I mean, I find it to be probably the most inspiring thing in the world, and I have, dedicated my life to that. Because of that reason, I oftentimes wish I was a musician. I feel like music does it really, really well. like I would say, like if you listen to a song that you heard maybe 20 years ago or something, it'll bring back so many memories. It'll be so visceral, so real. It can just completely transport you. And I do feel like paintings can do that as well. I feel like it's a little bit more challenging. I feel like music for whatever reason, is just, it really is successful at that. But I try to do that with each painting. I mean, that's kind of what I'm after, because those experiences that I have had with art have probably been the most profound in my life. And I kind of want to give other people that same experience if I can. And yeah, so I suppose that's it, just trying to create something that people can connect to and have a visceral emotional reaction to is what I'm after. And that's kind of how I would describe myself as a painter. I'm not sure if that would apply to everybody, but that's how I feel about it.
In the film, you say, and by the way, what I'm referring to, dear listener, in the film, in the documentary, is that Derek has a wonderful documentary that an artist did on his career as an artist. It's beautiful, beautifully shot, beautifully narrated, well spoken. It's just a gorgeous piece of work itself. But you go on in the interview, what is a painter, and then the question is more precisely put, what defines a painter?
Mm.
So, and you propose a certain elements in that definition, one of which is success, but not the only one. And so I guess now we've looked at what is a painter, what defines a painter. And maybe you could talk about some of your heroes. You mentioned Richard Schultz, maybe somebody that, what defines one of your heroes, and maybe start from that angle, Derek.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's another great question. Well, one thing too, so the documentary is called Defining a Painter, which again, that's a title that the filmmaker came up with after talking with me. And there is somewhat of a conclusion. I'm not sure if I should give that away, but in the end of the documentary, I kind of say what I think that is. And by the way, I should maybe mention there's going to be a screening of this documentary at Waterhouse Gallery on Saturday the 15th at 5 or at 6 p.m. So if anybody who lives here wants to come by and see it, that will be a good opportunity. And then it'll eventually be making its way online for everybody to see. But
Okay, so tell me again, when is it? When is it Ralph Waterhouse's?
yeah, it's going to be at Waterhouse Gallery at their Montecito location, which is their newer location. They still have their downtown one, but Waterhouse Gallery, Montecito, on Saturday, June 15th at 6 p.m.
Very cool. Very cool. So that'll be the sort of premiere of the documentary.
Yes, well, technically it'll be the second one, actually. So there was a premiere in Los Angeles. So they premiered this documentary at the American Film Institute. Oh, it was about a month ago, and they premiered it alongside the film that they did, the narrative film, which is called Movement, Light, and Life. So they ended up screening those together in a theater down there, and that was kind of the official premiere, where the cast from the film was there, the director, the whole crew, everybody, and then myself, and that was pretty special. That was pretty amazing to see it up on the big screen. But it's going to screen one more time at Waterhouse Gallery before it can be available online to stream for everybody.
Very, very wonderful. And the thing about your life was and obviously not an older gentleman at all, but the arc of your life is hard at this. And what was amazing to me, and I did not know this about you, that you started with an interest in tattoo art.
Yeah. Yeah. A lot of people don't know that. When I go to these openings at these galleries and whatnot, they would never guess. I don't look like your typical tattoo artist. I mean, I am a younger guy. I mean, I do have tattoos and everything, but they're pretty hidden. And yeah, I suppose it's not a common profession before being a painter. There are a lot of painters who actually go into tattooing, because tattooing, and one of the reasons why I did that was it's a much more secure way to make a living as an artist. As a painter, it's challenging. It takes a long time. It's not easy. So I started by tattooing, and I studied painting at the same time. And that's kind of how it all began, actually. I had an apprenticeship that I kind of got just it was kind of luck of the draw. I was working at a fitness center, actually. I was living in a place called Steamboat Springs, Colorado, which is a ski town in no northern Colorado. And I would sit at this front desk at this fitness center, and I would bring in a sketchbook because I would sit there all day. So I would draw, and sometimes I would even bring in canvases and actually paint at this desk. And people would come in and comment about it, talk to me about it all the time. And then one day somebody came in and said, I know this guy who owns a tattoo shop in town. He's looking for an apprentice. Have you ever thought about that? And at the time, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was pretty young at that point. I think I was maybe 20 years old. And I thought, yeah, why not? Let's see what happens. I'll try. I'll try it. And went in there, talked to him, and he hired me. And I started apprenticing. And 6 months later, I was tattooing full time. And it was quite an experience. And that's what brought me out here, actually, to Santa Barbara, was there was a shop out here that was hiring on State Street. It was called Energy Tattoo. They since have moved actually up to the Mesa, but they used to be on Lower State Street, and that's what brought me out here actually. And I was tattooing there for a couple of years, and I was taking painting classes down in LA at the LA Academy, where I now teach. And yeah, it was a slow journey, but that's where it began. And before, as soon as I could, really, as soon as I found a way to make it work, I found a studio and a live work studio, and kind of just took that leap of faith into painting full time.
Amazing, amazing. And I must say, well, just before we have to go to break, Richard's giving us a we got to go to a quick break, but the um, uh, the beginning of the documentary shows you getting out of bed or out of a couch, and you have your shorts on, etc. But you've got glorious, beautiful tattoos. And yeah, and who did the work? Now my question is, who did that? What artist did you?
Oh, well, yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, he wanted me to wake up as I normally would, and kind of show the start of my day. So a bunch of different artists. One of them that tattooed one of my legs was a pretty profound one. He was my first painting teacher, a guy named Sean Barber, and he was very sort of famous for painting hands. And so he actually tattooed a bunch of hands on one of my legs. And yeah, it was kind of, one of the hands is holding paintbrushes, the other hand is holding a tattoo machine. So, it was kind of an homage to my two career paths. And and then my arm, my sleeve, 3/4 sleeve was done by an artist named Jer Seno in Denver, Colorado. And then I actually did tattoo myself a fair amount, my upper legs. It was kind of part of the apprenticing process where you tattoo yourself. So a variety of different things, but those first two artists were the main ones who have done most of the work that I have.
Amazing. I can't imagine tattooing oneself.
It's an interesting experience, to say the least. It really is.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Richard, let's go to, hey, Richard, let's go to quick break. And I'm just reintroducing Derek Harrison. I've been wanting to get him on the show for quite a while. And now we have a reason to celebrate because the film that was made about his career, his life, his passion as an artist, defining an artist, defining a painter, is going to be premiered at Waterhouse Gallery Montecito Saturday, June 15th at 6 p.m. And before it goes, to the public, you can have an opportunity to see and actually meet Derek as well at Waterhouse Gallery on June 15th. Okay, Richard, let's go to quick break.
All right, you're clear.
So, John,
All right, here we go in 3, 2, 1. You're live.
Welcome back. It's Elizabeth Stewart. I have the great pleasure of speaking with artist painter Derek Harrison. And I wasn't aware, but now we know that the documentary that was done by Winston, tell me the last name again.
Stemler, Stemler, Winston Stemler.
Winston Stemler. Okay, and it is called Defining. Is it Defining a Painter?
Yes, perfect, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, that is a documentary about Derek's life, career, and passion, and it's fantastic. It is premiering at the Waterhouse Gallery in Montecito Saturday, June 15th at 6 p.m. Short but very poignant, and there's a lot of his work that's shown, and interestingly enough, a lot of Santa Barbara. And what's interesting is that there's a couple scenes of Derek as he's talking about studying the work of other painters. And of course, he's one of a beautiful pose at the courthouse and at the clock tower, I think.
Yep. We went up
Yeah.
there, shot a bunch around the courthouse. Love that spot.
Right. And I just have to say, this is just, it's like entering my life at a really interesting time, because just yesterday I was visiting a client. I'm an appraiser, and I was visiting a client whose father and grandfather were painting restorers. They were conservators in Santa Barbara in the teens, 20s, 30s, and 40s. So two generations of restoration painters. They were also painters themselves, but they were restorers primarily, both the father and the grandfather. And the son, my client, around my age, had a collection that was gathered of both the father and the grandfather's work, not their own work, but painters that they enjoyed, that they collected. And some of them are some pretty interesting local names of painters from the 20s and the 30s that lived here in Santa Barbara. As Santa Barbara was a community like Laguna. There were many wonderful painters that came out of Santa Barbara at the time. Edward Barine, for example, a couple of others I can think of. And the gentleman yesterday had a collection of some of these painters. And it was so interesting because they all knew each other. The minute I saw this work, I said, okay, I bet you've got a work by this artist. And yes, it was really evocative. And so when you're looking at the courthouse, they actually, that circle of artists, they were all friends in the 20s. That artist who painted at the courthouse. And what's so interesting to me is having an interview with you today, Derek. Your style is rather similar in many ways to the artists of the 20s that lived here in Santa Barbara. And I just had to bring that up because I was thinking, okay, we did a studio visit to your upstairs gallery. You're by the Arlington, and we went upstairs, like I say, like, oh my gosh, it was maybe January 2020, something like this, before we had to, never come out of the house again for 3 years, kind of thing.
Yeah, that was good, actually.
Yes, I remember that day and seeing the work, and I was thinking, gosh, when you're standing in front of some of the murals at the courthouse, I was thinking, yeah, I know why, the director put you in front of those murals. So tell me about some of your heroes.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah, that's a great observation. And I agree. I love those early, California impressionists that lived out here and did all of that work, and girls in the courthouse, even the paintings in the courthouse. I think there was a painter, his name was Colin Campbell Cooper, who had a studio here. And yeah, so many others. It is just so cool, the history of artists here. I do find that very, very inspiring. And I have a good friend, his name's Willis Heaton, who's lived here for a long time, and he's very well versed in all those painters. He's shown me many books about them and given me a really good idea of kind of what came before us. And he's taken me around painting a lot around Santa Barbara, when I first moved here, because I love plein air painting also. But painters of the past that I find really inspiring, I would say there's a guy, his name is Richard Schmid. And I'm not sure how well known he is out here. He lived primarily on the East Coast, but he wrote a book called Alla Prima. And it's kind of regarded as for modern day painters, sort of like this Bible of painting, where he just talks about how to paint and gives his life's advice, and it's really great. It was very profound when I read that. So he's a big one. The older guys, probably, John Singer Sargent has always been a favorite of mine. His brushwork is just so expressive. There's a Swedish painter who was also from the 1800s. His name was Anders Zorn.
Oh,
And
yes.
yeah, you're a Zorn fan. That's always nice. And then, well, I'm a more modern painter. One of my teachers is a guy named Jeremy Lipking, and he was sort of a Richard Schmid student of sorts. And I met him while I was still tattooing. Actually, this was many years ago. I took a workshop with him, and that was probably the biggest turning point for me when I met him and saw his work. It's just so incredibly beautiful. And we became friends. I spent a lot of time painting with him and learning from him. So he's a big one. I think a lot of the realist painters these days would know Jeremy's work. Um, but oh yeah, I will say, in terms of the California Impressionists, the guys who lived out here, I look at those paintings and I still, what I think what makes them so special. I mean, there's a lot of things that do, but one of the big ones is, there wasn't photography the way that we know it now. So they would always go out on location and paint from life, work in plein air as it was. And they just have such a trueness to them. You can just tell that they were looking at that in real life, and they had the skill set to accurately communicate that on canvas to where it does feel like you're there. It's just such a true representation of, the light that occurs in California, the atmosphere out here. So I'm always looking at that stuff. I find it very, very inspiring, without a doubt.
So it's interesting here again, full circle, because the family that I was visiting yesterday, and I was telling you, Derek, I was looking at two generations of their collections. They were painting restorers. The gentleman, the grandfather emigrated here from Sweden, and they had Zorn in their collection.
Wow, no kidding. Oh, that's
Yeah,
amazing. Those are hard. Those are rare to come by. I think I've
yeah.
only ever seen one or two Zorns in person, maybe ever. They're rare. Oh, that's very cool. That must have been fun to see.
I'll try to get you together with the family. That yes, they knew a lot of the Swedish artists, and they also knew there was another community on the East Coast, the Lime. They
Oh
think
yeah.
Lime is in Lyme.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, Old Lyme in Connecticut. They just reopened that art school out there. But yeah, you're right. That was a big one. And yeah, I always hear about that place, but they just reopened that art school, and it's probably one of the best art schools in the country right now.
right. Yes. Yes. I read about that, and of course, all of the Zorn and his circle are connected with that school for a while as well. There was some other wonderful realist painters out there, and it struck me was really interesting because your work has a lot of elements of both okay, so at the time, what's happening on the East Coast is it's closer to the Barbizon School, so it's more European. So the landscapes are more infused with um, less less impressionistic, I should say. On
Yeah,
this coast, we've got the pure California Impressionists, so we've got a different palette altogether. But on the East Coast, you've got a palette more similar, I would say, to some of your more deep realist work. And
that
then when you're working, go ahead.
sorry, yeah, that is an excellent observation, by the way. I just want to point that out because that's exactly, my sort of two influences. And that's such a great description that, yeah, the East Coast European side is way more rendered and like academic. And out here on the West Coast, it's far more impressionistic. And yeah, I'm absolutely trying to marry those two together. That's the type of painting that I really like. So I'm glad that's
That's
coming.
why you're so unique, because basically it branched off into those two schools, and they didn't really mix. They just, I mean, various painters from Santa Barbara went to visit the Lime colony, and vice versa. So there was some, people knew of each other back in the 20s, and so they knew of each other, and earlier too. They knew the kind of work that was coming out of both schools, but neither the two really mixed. I mean, I'd love to get you over to that client's house because his grandparents and his father collected both schools. And but at any rate, I digress. I want to get back to some of my questions for you. Now, this is my famous quote of my entire lifetime. Richard's going to laugh because he's heard it a million times before. But I had Michael Drury on the air when he was celebrating, I think, 40 years of teaching. And Michael is a painter that more abstract, but still figurative, and still does wonderful landscapes. But I said to him, Michael, it's your 40th year. What do you think is the most important thing to teach a young artist? You know, what do you say? And he said, well, I think the most important thing to teach a young artist, and of course he teaches painting classes, is when to stop. When to stop painting, when to stop the canvas, when to stop, when to stop. And I said, well, so can you answer that question for me yourself? What do you tell the students when you say the most important lesson I can teach you is when to stop? And Michael said, I tell them when to stop is right before they start to paint the brown potato in the sky. What that means is, you got it because you're laughing. What that means is with oil paint, the more you fool with it, the more brown you get. And before you know it, the blue sky with the clouds is now a brown potato in the sky. And he said, I've seen so many brown potatoes in the sky. You have no idea. And that's when I say, before you need to learn to stop before you see the brown potato in the sky on your canvas. So I ask you the same question. You teach at Westmont, you teach at Scottsdale Art School, you teach at Los Angeles Academy of Figurative Art. What are some of your favorite commands?
Well, yeah, I've never actually heard that expression before, but he makes a very good point. It's so easy to overwork a painting and it just loses all of its life. So you do have to be very careful about that. As far as what I think is the most important thing to teach, I would probably say it's to just truly, well, first you need to know yourself, okay, which takes time, but then to express that in a very genuine manner, which takes time, but just to be yourself, because learning technique is very important. That's probably what I teach the most, is more just how to paint, not what to paint or how you should put down a brush stroke. That's very much like your handwriting. It's just naturally how you will do it. So I try not to get in anybody's way, really. I'll help however I can, but whatever is naturally within them is what people will connect to the most, I think. It's whatever is most genuine is really what I think the audience sees and likes. If you're doing it skillfully, that really helps. But yeah, mostly to just be themselves. And also, part of being a painter and artist these days is navigating the very challenging business waters. And so I spend a decent amount of time talking about that, and just
Thank
having
God.
yeah,
Thank God. Nobody does. Nobody teaches that. And it's so funny because when I first moved here, I was asked to go and do some lectures at Brooks. And, this is years and years ago. And I was shocked that the lack of knowledge of the action. How do I price my work? Well, you're now in your third year of an MFA and you don't know how to price your work. I mean, it's it was hard for me to believe. Then my niece was at Tisch studying visual arts, and at NYU there was no classes on the business of the arts.
Oh, wow.
And it was like a dirty word to talk about, and it was even sort of like frowned upon to sign the work.
Oh yeah,
So
I've heard of that school of thought. I have to respectfully completely disagree with that. But what I noticed, there's a lot of painters out there who are like professional artists who they came from money in one way or another, so they haven't really had to worry about that. And then there's a vicious cycle where these teachers teach students, and then the students just become the teachers, and there's really not a lot of people who are actually making it as an artist out there in the world, because you have to have some business acumen for one. Learning how to price, there's a whole market out there to follow. There's a public's perception of your work and its value you have to be conscious of. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to think about, and it's not common knowledge. And unfortunately, there's a bit of stifling out there, especially at some of those higher end universities where they're very conceptually driven. And it almost takes the romance out of the art for them to talk about selling it or the business side. But I mean, it's a reality you're going to have to face, or else you won't be able to paint, for the rest of your life. I mean, maybe you can do it as a hobby, but I wanted to do it every day. That's all I want to do. So I needed to figure out a way to make it work as a career, as a livelihood. And it definitely didn't take the romance out of it for me. It only made it better. And I've only been able to go deeper and deeper into my work as a result of that.
I understand. It's so funny. I have a business that takes me other places, and there was the Contemporary Art Museum in San Diego asked if I could take a look at the work of a certain artist that they were thinking of purchasing for the permanent collection. And I went to visit, and I don't want to say his name, but you would recognize. And I said, the museum is interested and they'd like to know the track record of sales. He was not represented, he represented himself. And they'd like to know the track record of sales, and they'd like to have your opinion of value on certain pieces, etc., because the board is interested in purchasing. And you find this amusing, Derek. He opened his underwear drawer, and out of the underwear drawer flew a number of cocktail napkins with numbers on them, and that's his accounting. And yeah, and he was very proud of that fact. I of course had a piece together as well as I could, a spreadsheet for the museum. But at any rate, yes, there is that school of thought that it's dehumanizing to think of an artist charging
Yeah.
fairly. It's dehumanizing on some level. But I agree with you wholeheartedly that there's the awareness of the realities of the marketplace. I mean, we are in a consumer culture after all.
Yeah.
No matter, if you want to admit it or not. Richard's giving us a sign we have to go to quick break. So when we get back from the break, I want to introduce you to John Flandrick. You actually met him January of 2020 up at your studio. And John's got he's a photographer.
Yeah,
And
I
John's
remember
got,
John. He shot a
remember
wonderful
John?
photo of me
Yes.
that I still use to this day. It's on my website, actually.
Good for you. Good for you. Yes, he's a very talented artist himself. And he's got a couple of questions for you when we get back from the break. Richard, let's go to quick break. Reintroducing Derek Harrison. You're interested in his work, and you're interested in him as a wonderful human being, an inspirational artist. Waterhouse Gallery in Montecito, Saturday, June 15th at 6 p.m. A premiere showing of a documentary that was shot by Winston Sturman
Stemler.
and Stemler, and it's called Defining a Painter. Saturday, June 15th at 6 p.m. at Waterhouse Gallery in Montecito. To have a glimpse of this wonderful, wonderful documentary was very inspirational. I thought, Derek, very beautifully done. Don't turn that down. Back in a minute with Derek.
All right, you're clear.
Hey, and Derek,
Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
this is John. And Elizabeth has to go to some exercise class, so she asked me to wrap this up.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Oh.
thinking this is a great time for you to talk about whatever, something you want to bring up, as opposed to me. I'm not capable of asking questions like Elizabeth, it's just, it'll show that I know nothing about painting. You know what I mean? I'm not knowledgeable. So like, is there anything you want to bring up and talk about?
Well, I should mention there's another show coming up at the Maritime Museum on Thursday, June 13th. I could talk a little bit about that and the paintings I did for that. And
Feel free to take control of this and, go where you want to go or how you want to do it. But I wish I could turn on the camera.
yeah, I know. It's not the
I don't know how
same.
to turn on the camera on her computer. I'm looking, but
Well,
anyways.
one idea that comes to mind in addition to that Maritime Museum show, but since you're a photographer, if you were to tell me maybe a little bit about your inspirations and what drives you to do that, and then I can give you mine about my side.
I just go out and take pictures when I feel like it.
That's a great answer. See that's
I guess I should save it, but yeah, it's a lot about the job that's how I became a photographer, photographing art and antiques. But yeah, sure.
I find that
But
fascinating.
yeah, let's just do this together and we'll talk about the show. I can ask you, but I was sort of like, you want me to finish up the show? Okay.
Hey,
Well,
hey, John, get out of there.
All right, I can't.
I
can't,
understand.
Richard.
Hey,
Elizabeth is leaving. But Richard,
take
you
me
help
off the
too
air
if
there.
you have anything to
Let me
add.
see here. What was I going to? I can't remember what it was. I was going to say, are you going to be able to maybe work on that camera of hers as far as in the Zoom settings to try to get
Yeah,
that camera working?
I just feel like if I do it now, it could screw things up.
No, 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 not now. I'm talking later.
Hopefully,
Okay. All right. Well, we have one
I'm
more
sort of
break to
baffled.
take here before we wrap things up. I kind of moved things around so that we only have 3 breaks instead of 4.
Okay.
And by the way, though, I assume Elizabeth has left the building.
Oh, I'm here still. I'm here still, Richard.
I was just going to share with you that Amrita and I are going to get married on the 30th of June at the Maritime Museum on the 4th floor.
Wow.
Oh, well, we'll be there.
that's
Well,
awesome.
that's fine. We're actually keeping it to a small party of people. I just was wanting to share the news with you.
Excellent. That's wonderful. Okay.
Then we won't be there. Okay.
Well, you're welcome to join us downstairs. I believe it's the Anchor Rose, which is on the ground floor. We're gonna basically, it's just gonna be we're gonna have the ceremony, then we're gonna go downstairs, and we're gonna order dinner and just have a nice quiet evening of it.
Great.
Okay, here we go. Live time in 3, 2, 1. You are live.
Hello, and we're back. Elizabeth Stewart had to leave, and I'm John Flandrick here taking over the interview. And Derek was saying that he's got another show coming up that we haven't talked about yet at the Maritime Museum. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. The Santa Barbara Maritime Museum, right down there by the pier. They're hosting a show called Coastal Moments. It opens on Thursday, June 13th. That's when they have an opening reception. And then it'll be open to the public after that for a couple of months. And it's a group show curated by, well, there's 2 people, Emily, who works at the Maritime Museum, and then Diane Waterhouse from Waterhouse Gallery. All of the artists in it are Waterhouse artists. And so we each did a handful of paintings, with the ocean and the coast is the theme. And that, that'll be up at that museum here shortly, which it was a lot of fun to sort of delve into that subject matter. Since I live here, I go out to the coast quite a bit, paint a lot of waves. I'll bring models down to the beach to pose for scenes. So that's kind of what this whole show is about. And yeah, I mean, it should be interesting to see. I think people will like it. It's a wide variety of artists in it as well. I might be the most, sort of like refined or academic in there. There's a lot of impressionists who have done work for this show. So a wide array of styles, I would say.
Well, it kind of blows me away how much you're already doing. I imagine it wasn't always this teaching and having shows. That's something that I've kind of always wanted to as a photographer, to have a show, and I have not at this point. And I don't think I have enough to show like a show, you know what I mean? But it's amazing to me. And it's
I bet you do, though. You know what I've noticed? First of all, I should mention the photo, John, that you shot of me in my studio when you guys came to visit was maybe one of the best photos I have of myself in the studio. I've used that for so many things. And
cool.
it's not like I've been teaching for 20 years or anything like that, but in my short duration as a teacher, I have noticed most people never think that they are ready or that they're good enough or whatever. It's this imposter syndrome that artists seem to deal with quite frequently. I definitely did myself. One of these days I just kind of was like, I kind of just need to get over this, but I definitely feel the same way. And I tell students that, and they always think that's crazy. Why would you think that? And that's how I would feel about you. I'm sure you have great work that people would love to see and could be an awesome show. But, it's always a leap of faith. It's like taking a chance with anything. Maybe it's like a fear of, well, who knows? It could be a fear of a lot of different things, but I'll definitely, I have fond memories of the early days of just trying to get shows, trying to get into a gallery, trying to make anything work. And it was hard. So yeah, these days where there's always something going on that seemingly is exciting, it's quite frankly, it is a dream come true. And I hope it never ends. I hope it just keeps getting better, but I feel extremely grateful that it's worked out to this point.
That's that is wonderful. Everything you said, but it sounds like because you work hard, it keeps coming.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. I really, it's like an obsession. That's all I do is paint and think about painting and art. And I have had to, sacrifice a lot of other elements in my life to make it work. But for me, it's always been worth it. And I mean, there's not much else I would rather be doing. And
that's part of the key right there. Is this is what I want to do.
right. Yeah, exactly. No, that's exactly right. Maybe that, yeah, I'm lucky in the fact that I know that when I talk to other people out there who aren't, pursuing goals in the same sense, a lot of them don't know what they love doing or what they would want to do or, what they're passionate about. So, I think I got lucky with that one, just knowing that or finding something that I like that much is pretty awesome. I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, yeah. And you're still working at the same studio where I met you that's right downtown, or have you moved?
Yes, as a matter of fact, it is the same studio. It's undergone a lot of changes. So the building that I'm in was recently purchased a few years ago. I thought I was going to have to leave, actually. It was a stressful time to say the least, but I've been here now for I can't even remember, maybe like 8 years or something like that. It's been a while. And when I first moved in here, it was myself and my girlfriend at the time, and then we rented out the back portion of it to two other people. So there was four of us living in here. Now I have it all to myself. It took a while to make that happen, but when I first saw this place, I was still tattooing, and I just thought, I think I can make this work if it's divided among a bunch of different people to help pay the rent. And just as time went on, I just did everything I could, and I've been here by myself now for the last couple of years, and it's just become the most peaceful place where I can paint and paint until all hours of the night or whatever.
Do what
It's
you
great.
want, when you want, how you want. That's awesome.
That's exactly right. Yep, couldn't have said it better myself. Precisely.
And I think we have about 30 seconds left. Do you want to remind us of anything or say anything before we get off the air?
Well, I should just
Take a
mention,
break.
if you want to know anything more, you can always go to my website. It's DerekHarrisonArt.com. Any of the social media sites are just Derek Harrison Art. And then Coastal Moments show at the Maritime Museum is Thursday, June 13th. The screening of my documentary, Defining a Painter, as well as a small exhibition of paintings, is on Saturday, June 15th at Waterhouse Gallery at 6 p.m.
Excellent.
This is just a
It's
break,
great to see
just
you
a break.
again. And oh, we're taking a break. Oh, my apologies. I thought we had to go. We're taking a break and we'll be back in a second.
Very good. You're clear. Yeah, I didn't want you to end the show and then have to come back again.
Thanks. How much time do we have left when we come back?
You're probably only going to have about 2.5 to 3 minutes. So
All right.
basically what you could do is just, hey, go over the details one more time.
We just did that.
I know, but that's fine. Repeating it is a good thing because it just reminds them after this long, annoying space between segments.
No harm, no foul. I'm happy to mention it all again. Yes, better to
All
reiterate.
right, good. Thanks for taking up the slack here, because Elizabeth is so good at talking, and I'm always the quiet. I'm always the one that doesn't have much to say. So this
Yeah,
is
she
always
is
a
good.
challenge.
Oh yeah, I bet. Yeah, she's good at asking those questions. She has some good
Yeah,
questions.
she likes to be up in front of people and on stage. I did one radio show by myself, and I told her that was enough.
Really?
She was out of town or something, and it went fine. And even less, the station manager came in and said, "Oh, you did a good job," but like this isn't what I want to be doing. It's too stress. Like thinking of things to say that keep people interested. It's hard
Yeah.
work for me.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. I I'm not much of a talker myself naturally. In fact, usually when I go to art show openings, I'll lose my voice because I spend so much time in my studio painting by myself that I don't speak for days sometimes.
Your voice isn't, yeah, it isn't in shape.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I rarely exercise it, so it's easy to go. But you know, I think it's good. I think it's good to let the people in on what's doing. You know, it seems to help them connect to the work. So
Yeah.
part of the process.
That's the other thing is like if I had a show, talking to all these people and like answering their questions, I think I would become like flustered and be like, you know, that, that would be difficult also, I think. I do prefer like I haven't been photoing a lot lately. I've been building tricycles in my garage.
Oh,
And I made an all-wheel drive tricycle that goes everywhere. It's super fun. And that's been
that's
kind of my
awesome.
new passion. And I've
Nice.
sort of gotten over it and I'm close to maybe wrapping it up. I'm building one more, but I'm not sure it's what I want to do for the rest of my life. But it sure was fun for the last couple of years.
Yeah, I
I don't
bet
know.
that sounds awesome.
You're often in your studio, right? You're like there working. I
Yeah,
ride by I
yeah,
ride by a lot.
do
Maybe
you
I
really?
could stop by and show it to you.
Yeah. Swing up
That
anytime. Usually I'll leave my door open when I'm here, so
good. If I see the door open, maybe I'll come up and say you want to check it out. But it's pretty
perfect.
cool.
Yeah, that'd be great. That sounds good. Yeah, I'd love to see it. And it'd be cool for you to, the studio looks completely different now. I
I'd
repainted
love
the
to
whole
see
thing.
it again. Yeah, when we were there, I think there was somebody else sharing the space. I can't
Yeah.
remember if it was a tattoo person or a t-shirt person or
Yeah.
something.
It was a tattoo artist named Danny. We shared it for a few years together. Yeah, he moved down to San Diego to tattoo a couple of years ago. So yeah, now it's just me. But it was us too. And it was white in here also. The walls were all white. Now they're all gray.
Hey, can you do a tattoo of a full head of hair?
Yeah. I could. I don't think it would be believable, but I could. You know, there are artists who do that though. I've seen it done and it looks pretty good. I'm not sure
All
if I
right.
have
Well,
the
hey, we're coming back, and guess what? You don't have to fill too much. You got 2 minutes. 2 minutes. Three, 2,
minutes.
1. You're live.
Well, hello, we're back, and we have a couple minutes before the show ends. And I don't know, Derek, is there anything that you want to tell everybody and remind them before we hit the road? I guess, you know,
Well, I can just reiterate, I suppose, my closing remarks as they were. Just if you want to reach out to me or if you want to know any more about my work, you can go to my website. It's DerekHarrisonArt.com. Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff is Derek Harrison Art. And then a couple of shows coming up this month. The Maritime Museum on Thursday, June 13th. And Saturday, June 15th at Waterhouse Gallery. It's going to be a small little exhibition of paintings and a screening of the documentary I was in called Defining a Painter. And yeah, I mean, I do have a studio right on State Street, right next door to the Arlington Theater. Sometimes I host classes up here. So if there's anybody out there who's interested in painting, feel free to reach out. Anybody's always welcome up here. So
excellent. It is a wonderful studio. When we visited you right before COVID started. Is that what Elizabeth was saying? I forget when it was.
yeah, you're
I
probably the
remember
last visitors to come through before the world
before
changed.
it all happened.
Yeah.
Well, it's been wonderful to see you and talk with you again. And thank you for coming on the air. And I'll stop by sometime and say hello when the doors open and enjoy your day. All right.
Great.
Thanks,
Sounds good.
Derek.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
Bye.
Bye.
All right, you're clear. Good to go.
Thanks, Richard. All right. Well, it's good to see you all, and I'll talk to you sometime. And thanks, Richard.
Oh yeah, thanks you guys.
Hey, you're very welcome. Anytime, anytime.
All right. See y'all.
All right. Bye-bye.